Origin of genocide. A lot of people talk about genocide, it's a genocide. But they forget the original, the first genocide, where the word really comes into the English language. Now, this right here is a lie. Here they say genocide definition. The term genocide was defined in 1944 by Raphael Lemkin, allegedly, right? A Jewish Polish legal scholar. Lemkin's definition became the basis of the Genocide Convention adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations in 1948. Well, that all might be true, but that's not the origin of the word. That's not even the coining of the word, genocide. We hear a lot of people talking about genocide. Forget the real, I would say the first genocide, but where this word first came into use, right? And it was not the United Nations, the United Gentiles. It was not at the United Gentiles in 1948, United Heathen. No, it was actually at the League of Nations, from the League of Nations time. Nobody remembers the League of Nations time, right? It's a League of Nations time, the League of Gentiles, League of Heathen, League of Pagans. But this here, we were surprised, say, wow, and it is so evident that there's racism even in this whole idea of the coining of this. Oh, so genocide first. So what does genocide mean? Right? What is genocide? Right? Let's go over here. Right? Genocide. Right? This is some of the definitions of genocide right here. And we're going to show and prove what is not the origin of genocide, but in modern time, where this word really comes from. Right? It comes from the genocide, right? The extermination, the attempted extermination of an entire stock of people, to say an entire race, right? It's a race of people, an ethnicity and a race of people. And we're talking about the Ethiopians. We're talking about black people. So the origin of the word genocide was because of black people. And we can even say black Jewish, or rather black Judah people, right? People of the tribe of Judah. Right? And I guess you can call them Jewish if Judah and Jewish has some relation within the English and Western way of thinking, then yeah, Jewish, like Bob Marley said, well, he's the line of the tribe of Judah, so that must be Jewish, right? But it was a black Jewish, right? Talking about the tribe of Judah, talking about the Ethiopians. Are you not as the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel? You know that there in Amos 9:7, are ye not as the children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel? So here we go right here. Here's the verse, right? That was seeking to quote Amos chapter 9, verse 7. Are y'all not as the children of the Ethiopians, the B'nai Cushim, to me, O B'nai Yisrael, O children of Israel, saith Yahweh? Have not I brought up Israel of the land of Egypt, Mitzrayim, and the Philistines from Caphtor, and the Syrians from Ker, for Ker? Here, you see it right there. Are ye not as the children of the Ethiopians to me, O children of Israel? So we find it to be very disingenuous, right, when we come across some of these right here. Move that over here, clear that right here. Here, what's that Lemkin? The Lemkin one right here. The Lemkin. The term genocide was defined in 1944. Really? No. What they did was they basically used the genocide, the recorded, documented genocide of the Ethiopians, right? You can say of the tribe of Judah, Ethiopians, right? During the fascist, right? The fascist invasion. Right? Everybody talk about fascism. Say, oh, these fascists, that's fascist. They forget, nobody mentioned Ethiopia when they talk about fascism, right? And it's like, because they ignore that warning, right? They ignore that, something worse happened, right? So here one seeks to define this term, no doubt, with the European Jewish Holocaust. And based on, the evidence that has been put forward, it does appear that there's a case of, genocide, based on the numbers and what has been said. That's not our point here. Our point here is that is not the origin of the term genocide, right? And when people talk about genocide, nobody mentions we the black people of the world, right? Nobody mentions that. And to even prove that it wasn't in 1944, actually we have to scroll to 1936. Right? It's actually 1936, and it was not at the United Nations. Basically what they picked up on, right, is the defunct League of Nations. But the League of Nations was the first attempt. And because, a black man came and spoke about truth, they didn't want to listen to it. So when the black man spoke about truth, so like, we're speaking about this. We spoke about this before, right? We actually saw a video that a brethren sent to I, and the guy was talking all about genocide in 2004 and the genocide and this and that, and talking about blah, 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 but no one even mentions. It's almost like, some people talking about what's going on in the Middle East, and yeah, that's the situation there. Many black folks, but they're not talking about the genocide of our own black folks. It's like they can feel it for everybody else other than their own, right? Or at least other than their skin folk, or even other than their kinfolk, right? So here the word genocide, see, they talk about deliberate extermination of a people or a nation, right? Deliberate extermination. So here, genocide. So let's look through some of these terms. Genocide, it's a genocide, deliberate extermination, all right? Now, this goes back to all of that eugenics. It seems like the black people are the first victims of these things. They say black people are original man, but the first victims of it. But even we begin to forget about that, and we can feel it, so-called for others' alleged genocides, and not for the real genocide, that if it was dealt with in the beginning, then all the rest would not have happened later on or afterward. Find this to be kind of very, very interesting right here. Belgium colonists believed Tutsis were a naturally superior nobility descended from the Israelite tribe of Ham. How interesting is that? They believe the white man on the Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and one was black, one was white, and one was like gray in between or something like that. But they're going to dismiss this right here. Right? So are the Tutsis descended from the Israelite tribe of Ham? That's not our point right here, but just to show this was a way of their, what they call it, eugenics, superior race, doing all these kind of things and measuring people's features, descendants of the tribe of Ham, right there. These comparisons, the colonialists. Now, we know that there was genocides, of many people, right? But in modern times, when we get this word genocide, let me show you what the origin of genocide is. First of all, let's just go through this right here. Remember when His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie spoke? Some people don't remember that. Okay, let me tell you. Okay, let's go to 1936, the fascist invasion of Ethiopia, the fascists, Benito Mussolini, right? Should we tell you about the Pope? The Pope was blessing bombs. I kid you not. The Pope, right? The Pope. The Catholic Church, Christian, was blessing bombs, right? Weapons of mass destruction was first used there. So genocide, right? The term genocide originated, right, with the destruction of black people, the extermination of Ethiopian people. Why nobody want to, recognize this? Right? And tribe of Judah, Jewish, right? Tribe of Judah. This is way before. See, if they addressed this that occurred in the 1930s, then the so-called European Holocaust, Hitler, and however many millions or whatnot of European Jews and others, there was a lot of black people mixed up in that. You see, even there we find the racism. We would feel it if you say, well, look what they did to my family. But then my family, right, or what they did to like your family, but then when my family also goes to the same thing, you don't want to mention my family, right? You don't want to talk about genocide. The term was coined because of what His Majesty said, what Haile Selassie I said, right? What he said right here. We're going to get to that as well. Historic quotations of the century, 1936, right? What we're speaking about right here. 1936, you see League of Nations. 1963, United Nations. Right? What did he say in 1936? He said, God and history will remember your judgment. Right? God and history will remember your judgment. Right? And God and history certainly does remember the judgment. All right? So let's go over here. Let's go over here. Give me one moment. Let me bring up the proof, the evidence, concerning the origin of genocide, right? The origin of the term genocide. The term genocide was coined because His Majesty spoke in Amharic, right? And what he said in Amharic about the attempt to exterminate an entire stock, of people, right? Here, let's put this on right here as a still right here, 1936, at the League of Nations. Nations is Goyim, in the Hebrew Goyim. At the United Goyim, the United Gentiles, United Nations, the United Heathen. If you're a papist, you could say pagan, right? The United Pagans, the United Nations. Let's go over here. So the first genocide in modern times, the first genocide, where we even get this term genocide. First genocide, right? Coined because of the words of His Majesty speaking of the genocide in Ethiopia. The first genocide, right? The first genocide of black people in Ethiopia, right? The first genocide of black people in Ethiopia. The word genocide coined, right? Because of Haile Selassie's words at the League of Nations. Right, so here we're doing this vlog right here. First of all, to educate and to inform, and also so we can get the history correct. So we began off with that Limkin in 44, and the United Nations Convention on Genocide, and yes, all of that is historically documented in 1944. But let me take you at least to about 8 years earlier. Right, 8 years earlier, and often when you hear the term genocide is speaking of the European Jews, right? But the first genocide was of the tribe of Judah, right? It was concerning the tribe of Judah, right? People, right? The lion of the tribe. We're not talking about just religion, but the tribe of Judah. So here we caught this here, and it said, where did the word genocide come from? This is very, very interesting. Right? I didn't even go all into the article because I know they're not going to give credit where credit is due, right? Only when you know the truth and start to speak on this truth, right? And start to verify what we're presenting here, then, they'll update things. And we've seen this already on Wikipedia, a lot of other crowdsourcing and, aggregating, where they aggregate information. We all kind of like weigh in on something, which is an interesting way, right, to communicate, right? It means that somebody just can't say something for other people saying that's false or challenging them to bring forth their facts. So here with where did the word genocide come from? Now, the Lemkin that we mentioned already is where most people probably will go to, right? The Lemkin, right? Just in case you just started watching this right here, right? Let's go over here. Let's go over to this right here. Move this on the side. Right, and where's Lemkin right here, right? So the first genocide, right? First genocide was of Ethiopians, right, of the tribe of Judah, right? That means Judahites, right? That means also in modern parlance, Jews, right? But we only hear about the European Jewish genocide, right? And that fits the description, but that's not the first. Right? That's not the major. And if the first was addressed, if the first, quote, genocide was addressed, then even the European, the Jewish Holocaust, and so many other genocides could have been averted. So the first one, I first get robbed. I say, hey, there's a thief, a criminal, robber going around stealing, right? And everybody ignores me. Right, then somebody else later on gets robbed. Now it's a big thing. Now everybody's talking about, oh, yeah, don't rob, and but people are like, I wasn't robbed. I wasn't the first victim of the robbery. I was saying, hey, don't do this. Let's stop this. This is dangerous for people, not even just for myself, but for humanity. I was defending the court of humanity, speaking on behalf of His Majesty right there. So this is false. So you see the date, 1944. Okay, let's go over here. All right, let's go over here. Let's bring that out. Where did the word genocide come from? Good question. Where did it come from? Let's show and prove right here. Right, where did it come from? Okay, here. Let's go to the League of Nations. All right, so we're going to talk about the League of Nations. All right, this is from the autobiography of Emperor Haile Selassie, right? League of Nations. Now, this was written circa 1930s, right? In the 1930s, right? Recording and documenting the events of 1936 into 1937. Now, here, this is from chapter 50, right? Chapter 50. Our journey to Geneva, Switzerland, in quest of justice, right? To plead the cause. It says the Lord will plead for his people, to plead the cause of justice, in quest of justice, right? Tzedek, from the League of Nations. Now, the League of Nations was a predecessor of the United Nations. You know, they say if you fail, right, try again. But they keep trying and they keep failing, right? But the first attempt was the League of Nations, right? So we're going to scroll through this right here, right? At that time, there was like 52 or so nations, right? Let's just scroll down so ones can, go through this slowly and if they want to read it, right? Chapter 50, right? Then the friends came to his majesty, says, it will be better if your majesty were not to go to Geneva. The reason being, if you yourself went and appeared before the assembly, and if after your speech you fail to secure justice, your grief will be the greater. Hence, it would be better if you sent envoys. So ones were advising his majesty not to go. And this is the first time where you have the leader of a nation, the head of state, the leader of a nation going himself. Before, it was people sending messengers. But here, we have the head of state, the Risa Behir himself going. And you know what? This caused a whole kind of a trend. Nowadays, we only find like heads of states going to these events and speaking, UN, other places, speaking and representing their nation and representing whatever their cause is. But back in them days, right, that was not the policy. So we even get to see this that His Majesty did, where the head of state, right, representing the cause of their state, their government, their people. Others, again, gave us friendly advice, right, right, to this effect, right? Okay, so the reason why we left our country, Ethiopia, because people talk about, oh, His Majesty ran and left the country, Ethiopia. What kind of anointed king on the throne of David could that be? Well, King David did the same thing. Greater David, greater son, Moshiach ben Dawid. So here's the first exhibit, right? Right, in quest of justice, right? That was the first page. Now over here, right, this is the next page. So we're going to scroll down right here. Let's scroll down right here. Now it's interesting because when His Majesty began, it says, when we went there on the appointed day and stood at the lectern, right, the Italians, the fascists, blessed by the papacy, blessed by the Pope. The Pope actually blessed weapons of mass destruction, right? Weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. These terms that people talk a lot about. Oh, they're using WMDs. Oh, war, brutality, genocide, extermination. But you forget? Do you forget? Right? In order to solve the problem, you have to go back. Well, how did it begin? How do we get here? Right? How did this begin? Right? How did this apathy towards, the destruction of entire stock of people begin? Right? So when His Majesty began, right, there was the Italians who had come there for news reporting, started to whistle continuously with the intention of obscuring our speech. Right? So not only were these people doing wickedly, speaking about the fascists. Now, I'm not speaking about all Italians, but the fascists in particular, right? The fascists, right? Benito Mussolini's fascists, right? Started to obstruct his speech, right? And rendered it inaudible. And you can actually check out some of the videos from 1936, Haile Selassie at the League of Nations. At this moment, Romanian delegate Titulescu, he remarked to the president of the assembly, M. von Zeeland, for the sake of justice, silence those beasts. Right? These things in reality to bring out the words of prophecy so very interestingly, right? So very good, right? So the president of the assembly, seeing the rude behavior of the Italians, of the fascists in front of so many international representatives ordered the guards to expel the Italians by force. They then seized them and ejected them. So His Majesty begins to read his speech, as it says right here in Amharic, and it was arranged that it should immediately be translated into French and English. I want you to follow along this right here. All right, so His Majesty spoke in the Lisana Negusa Negest, like the language of the King of Kings in the Royal Amharic, and it was arranged that it should immediately be translated into French and English so that the whole assembly could understand it. The text was as follows, right? So first, His Majesty said, Your Excellency, right, Mr. President, right, Your Excellencies, envoys of the nations, envoys of the Gentiles, the heathen. We have to keep it biblical, right? Talk about the nations, right? Says the Lord said that his determinations to assemble all nations together and pour out on them, the fury of his indignation, judgment, right? He said, I should have liked to speak to you in French, but as it is in the Amharic language alone that I am able to speak my mind from my heart and with all the force of my spirit, right? I would beg, right? Right here, let's go over here. Beg, right? The forgiveness, speaking in these terms, these how can we say these noble terms, forgiveness of the General Assembly, right? Parliamentarian terms, right? Of the League of Nations for not speaking in French, right? Now he goes into this right here. I, Haile Selassie, first, and then Kadamawi Haile Selassie, Negusa Negesa, Ethiopia, am present here today to ask for the impartial justice due to my people and for the help which 52 nations had undertaken to extend to it when they affirmed 8 months ago that a war of aggression, so already we get almost a whole year. So I can hear people talking about what's happening over in the state of Israel, so-called Gaza thing and the Palestine, all this and that. But look at this, that a war of aggression and violation of international law was being waged against Ethiopia, right? Ethiopia was invaded. Like when the Palestinians, didn't they invade? Okay, we don't want to talk about that, but let's talk about genocide, right? There is no man other than the Negusa Negest, the King of Kings, translation called Emperor, to present the appeal, right, of the Ethiopian people to these 52 nations. Now, how many nations, the United Nations? Hundreds, right? Perhaps this is the first time that a king or president, you see where he says, perhaps this is the first time that a king or president appears before this assembly and addresses it. Truly, it was one of the first times, yes. But it is truly only today that violence of this kind is being committed against a people which is now falling victim to the aggressor. We're talking about the fascist invasion of Ethiopia after the newly crowned, anointed, and crowned king upon the throne of David had come to the throne. Remind me of what the Bible, when King David had become king, the Philistines attacked because they thought they could attack against King David when he was weak. This is the same thing that the fascists, the Romanist fascists, Mussolini, right, did as well. But here we go right here. You see right here? Further, there has not been a previous example. Notice this, what is Matthew saying, right? In Mark, it says, furthermore, there has not been a previous example of a government that has set out to extinguish methodically and by means of cruelty, you see the highlighted part? The entire stock of another people. I want to zoom in on that. Okay, this is the most I can zoom in on it right here. The entire stock of another people in transgression of a covenant which it has honorably and publicly entered into in form of a treaty concluded with the nations of the world, to wit, that one government was not to deprive another of his country by means of war, and that it was not to exterminate innocent human beings by powerful and toxic poison gas. You see, weapons of mass destruction here. Ain't nothing new under the sun, right? The type of weapons and poisons killing people has been on the earth already, right? They is find their ways, right? The effectiveness of doing evil. But you see where it says the entire stock of another people. So the idea of setting out to extinguish methodically by means of cruelty the entire stock of another people. You see the 5 next to stock? Let's scroll down to the bottom. And here we're going to make the point. You see right at the bottom where it says the highlight, it says that words used here by the emperor, or in the Amharic, we don't have really emperor in that sense in our language, right? What's used here in the actual is Negusa Neges, which means king of kings. Negusa Neges Ethiopia. Moan Besazem Neged Yehuda, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, right? Must be Jewish. Yehuda, the root, right? Correspond exactly to genocide. Look at that. The Amharic words used here by Negusa Neges. Now, the footnote here is Edward Uhlendorf, right? Semitic scholar, very good scholar, may Yah bless and rest his soul. He did a very good work and did a good work in this translation of His Majesty's autobiography, Hiwateana Ethiopia Rimja, My Life and Ethiopia's Progress. But here, connected with what he translates here from the Amharic up here, the entire stock of another people, right? Down here, he says the Amharic words. So His Majesty basically coined the term that would become the term called genocide, because of the genocide being committed, right? Being committed against the Ethiopian people. Are ye not as the children